Hello and welcome to Chapter 10, Lesson 11. Today we're going to be adding mixed numbers. Quick reminder, mixed numbers are just numbers that have a whole number and a fraction. So if I was going to look at where is 9 and 3/4 on a number line, that would be normal numbers 8, 9, 10, 11. 9 and 3/4 is going to be 9. Plus 3/4, so it'd be about right here between 9 and 10. Okay, so that's where our mixed numbers are. So let's get working with them. A hammerhead shark swam 2 1/4 miles. The next day, it swam 1 1/4 miles. How many miles did it swim altogether? Okay, so we've been estimating with mixed numbers. So I know that 2 1/4 is close to 2. 1 1/4 is close to 1. So when I add 2 plus 1, I'm going to get 3. So here's where they're at. They're saying, hey, look, we can use the associative property of multiplication or of addition. We can move all of the ones. That'd probably more be commutative, but we can move all of our ones together and all of our 1/4 together. So then I'm adding 3 ones together, and then I'm adding 2 1/4 together, which would make a 2/4, which hopefully you're noticing, hey, I better make that into simplest form. So it would be 3 1/2. Now listen, I don't love the way they show you how to do this. So I'm going to kind of scooch this little guy off to the side here and show you. So we're doing 2 1/4 plus 1 1/4. Okay, at first I'm going to do just like addition. I'm going to add my fractions. I'm starting on the right? I normally start with the ones place. This time we're starting with the fractions. 1/4 and 1/4 makes 2/4. 2 plus 1 equals 3. Okay, and then I would see I need to reduce. And then I would get 3 1/2. I'm going to rewrite it because this doesn't look very nice. My answer is 3 1/2. Okay, all of this funny business, don't even notice it. Just do it this way. Okay, let's look at the next one. And hey, 3 1/2 is really close to 3. Notice over here where they're having us see, is our answer reasonable? Yes. And here's kind of a good model using the fraction tiles. So I add 2 1/4 plus 1 1/4, so I can just add my whole numbers together, my fractions together. So let's take a look at the next one. The diagram shows the length of a sea turtle. What is the total length of the sea turtle? Okay, so I need to add, I'm going to scooch this. Again, don't really care for how they're working it out, so let's do this down here. So I have 3. I'm going to put 3 on top just because it has the largest whole number. 3 1/4 plus, let's do, fine. I'll do 7/8. Okay, so if I'm going to get common denominators to add 1/4 and 7/8, I would need to multiply by 2 to get 2/8. Okay, so here I have 2/8 plus 7/8. So that would get me to 9/8. And then 3 plus nothing will get me 3. Okay, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add my 1 1/8. Just because I know we are all like, hey, that's an improper fraction. Or at least I hope you guys are that way. So anyways, when I add 9/8 plus 1/8, I get 10/8. 3 plus 1 is 4. Okay, so let's look at that. 4 and 10/8. First off, I can reduce. So maybe let's start there. Okay, let's reduce. Divide by 2, and I would get 10 divided by 2 is 5. 8 divided by 2 is 4. That's a little easier to work with. Now, we've got a couple options. I can divide the top by the bottom. I could do 5 divided by 4. 4 goes into 5 once. Minus 4. I have 1 left over. Here's my numerator. Here's my denominator. 1 1/4. I have the option of splitting this out and saying 4/4 plus 1/4, right? 4/4 is equal to 1 plus 1/4, right? So then I would take, so this is me kind of working with my fraction, which is separate from my answer over here. Okay, so I have to add 1 and 1/4 back into this 4. So if I add 1, add my whole number in, I'm going to get a 5, and then I have 1/4 left over. Okay, so I was looking at my improper fraction, changing into a mixed number. When I did that, I got 1 and 1/4. So then I have to add that back to my 4. Okay, so notice how I had to add 1 to my whole number because 5/4 is worth 1 and 1/4. Right? So I had to add that back in, and I got 5/4 feet. 5 and 1/4 feet is how long the sea turtle is. So I showed you two options here, just to review. You don't have to do both. You could choose if you wanted to divide it out, or you could choose if you wanted to split it out between one whole and the fraction. It's completely up to you which way you'd like to do. Okay? Here, it's asking us to estimate, then add. Okay, so first we're going to estimate what is 3 3/8 plus 2 1/2. Okay, so for 3 3/8, a half would be 4/8. 3/8 is really close, but it's not more, so I'd round this one to 3. 2 1/2 is not more than a half, so I round down to 2. So my answer would be about 5 is where I would be looking at. Okay, so because none of these are greater than a half. If it's greater than a half, we round up to 1. If it's less than a half, then we round down to 0. We don't add 1 to our whole number. So our estimate is it's going to be about 5. Then it says write the sum in simplest form. Sum is just the answer to an addition problem. So let's do that. 3 3/8 plus 2 1/2. I need to get common denominators in order to add my fractions. So I'm going to multiply the 2 to get it to be an 8. Okay, so when I do that, I get 4/8. Now 4 is half of 8, so that makes sense. That would equal 1/2. Okay, so now I'm adding 3 plus 4, 3/8 plus 4/8, which would get me to 7/8. And then I can add my whole numbers. 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay, look at that. There we go. 5 7/8, and it's already simplified. 5 7/8. Okay, I want to do this one because this is kind of a little more talk on how to simplify 3 6/4. Notice we have an improper fraction. So it's that two ways. I can take the fraction and isolate it and do top divided by the bottom, or I can take the fraction and split it up between 4/4 and 2/4. So let's do both ways. We need to remember, not forget about our 3. So I'm going to look at that 6/4. I can take it as 4/4 plus 2/4. 4/4 is equal to 1. 2/4, if I simplify it, divide them both by 2, I'd get 1/2. 1 1/2. Okay, if I add 1 1/2 to 3, I would get 4 1/2. Would be how I would simplify that. I also have the option, like I said before, to do top divided by the bottom. 4 goes into 6 once, with 2 left over, which would be 2. There's my numerator. Here's my denominator. And then we know that can simplify to 1/2. Okay, so both ways we get 1 1/2, which is good because that means we're doing the right work. Estimate, then add. Write each sum in simplest form. Okay. Estimate, this would be about 2, this would be about 6, right? 7/10 is more, so our estimate is going to be 8. See how quick that was? Doesn't have to take a long time. I just kind of happened because I'm trying to explain everything to you, and then I'm going to do 2 1/10 plus 5 7/10. We already have common denominators, so I just have to add my numerators. So I did 1 plus 7 is 8/10. 2 plus 5 is 7. Now I do need to simplify. 4/5, so my answer would be 7 and 4/5, which is pretty darn close to 8. Okay, so let's do the next one. This one I would estimate would be about 10, and this one would be about 9, so I should get around 19 for my answer. Let's take it here. 9 and 3/4 plus 8 and 3/4. Okay, 3/4 plus 3/4 is 6/4. 9 and 8 makes 17. Now notice we have an improper fraction and it can be simplified. I think it's kind of easier to work with them when they're already simplified. So let's do that. 3/2. Okay, if I take 3/2, I can break it up into 2/2 plus 1/2. That would be my 1. I have to add it to 17. So I would get 18.5. Is 18.5 really close to 19? Yes, it is. Okay, so 3 and 5/8. 5 is more than 4, which 4 would be a half. 4/8, so I'm going to add 1. So I'm going to say that's about 4. 6.5, it's a half, so I have to go down. I don't know, maybe it makes sense to round up for a half. Let's go up to 7, since I rounded down. Well, I rounded up for both of them. Okay, anyway. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It should be about our answer here. Now again, if you chose to round down because it was a half, not a big deal. Okay, half's kind of the tricky one. But I suppose if we follow our rule of 5 or more rounds up, we should, if half would round up then. I don't think I did that on the last one, so it's not really going to change our answer anyways. Just going to change our estimate. But 3 and 5/8 plus 6.5. Got to get common denominators. Times 4 would get 4/8. 5/8 plus 4/8 equals our good old friend 9/8. 3 and 6 is 9. Now notice I need to break this apart. I can do 8/8 plus 1/8. That one needs to be added to my whole. So I'd get 10 and 1/8. And look, I probably should have rounded down because 10 is a closer estimate than 11. But same, it's not that big of a deal. It tells me if I'm getting in the ballpark. So we don't need to get hung up on an estimate ever. Okay, let's keep going. All right, I know this is going to be a long one, so I'm going to try to make it shorter, not do that one. So let's do 11 and 3/5 plus 6 and 4/15. I need to multiply by 3 to get a common denominator of 15. So I'd get 9/15. 9 plus 4 is 13/15. Then I'm going to add my whole numbers. Notice how I'm adding this fraction with this fraction. I can do it because they're common denominators. 11 and 6 makes 17. So 17 and 13/15 is my answer. So here's what I'm going to say. At this point, I'm fine if you skip around to what you need. I'm going to do some more examples. I'm going to do some problem solving ones, so maybe that would be good if you're interested in seeing that. But I feel like we've gone through everything that you need to know. Some of you have a lot of background in this, some of you don't, so keep watching if you don't. But I'm going to say if you are like Mrs. Hamer, I get this, I don't need any more examples, just let me do my work, go ahead, stop the video here. Okay, so here we go. I'll put the quiz question here too. So 9.5 plus 12 and 11, that's supposed to be an 11, not an H, 20ths. Okay, so I need to multiply by 10, multiply by 10, and get 10/20ths. So now I'm adding 10/20ths and 11/20ths to get 21/20ths. And then 9 and 12 would also make 21. Isn't that cute? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to add, break up 20/20ths plus 1/20th. Okay, this makes my 1. So I'm going to get 22 and 1/20th, would be my answer. All right, let's do some problem solving. Okay, a flower is 9 3/4 inches tall. 1 week, it grew 1 1/8 inches. How tall is the flower at the end of the week? Write in simplest form. 9 3/4 inches plus 1 1/8 inches. So I'm going to add my fractions. I need to get common denominators, 4 and 8. So I need to multiply by 2. I'm going to get 6/8 plus 1/8, which is going to get me to 7/8. 9 plus 1 is 8. Oh, no, it's not. Subtracting, 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 7/8 inches. Find 10 3/7 plus 18 2/7. Write in words in simplest form. Ooh, nice. 3 plus 2 is 5/7. 10 plus 18 is 28 5/7. Ooh, okay, I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to watch me write. 28 5/7. Cool. Explain to a friend. Now, please, if you ever get this on your assignment, just explain to a family member. Okay, now that we're at home doing this, explain to a friend. Connor is filling a 15-gallon wading pool. On his first trip, he carried 3 1/12 gallons of water. He carried 3 5/6 on his second trip, 3.5 gallons on his third trip. Suppose he carries 2 2.5-gallon buckets on his next trip. Will the pool be filled? So here's what I know. I know that 2.5 and 2.5 makes 5. So my last one is I'm going to add 5. Okay, I can do a quick, easy conversion of these 1/2s to make them have a 6 as a denominator. And that would be multiplying them both by 3. So these two 1/2s are going to be 3/6. Because I know that 3/6 is also worth a half. Okay, so I have to add all my 6s together. So 3 and 5 makes 8. 8 and 3 makes 11/6. 3, 6, 9 plus 5 would get me 14. Okay, so now I have to look at this 11/6. Okay, so I can do 6/6 plus 5/6. So I need to take that whole number 1 and add it to my 14 to get 15. And then, he's going to have a little bit too much. Yes, the pool will be filled. And, and there will be an extra 5/6 of a gallon, which I suppose could cover any spillage you might have had when you were pouring it in. I don't know, or you just don't need it. But anyways, there we go. Last question here is a test practice. Benjamin had 1 2/3 gallons of fruit punch left after a party. He had 1 3/4 gallons of lemonade left and 2/3 gallon of apple juice left. How many total gallons did he have left? So I have to take 1 2/3. I'm going to add it to the 2/3 since it has a common denominator. So I'm going to get 1 4/3. Okay. And then I'm going to add plus 1 3/4. Now don't get this mixed up. This is not common denominators. I have a 4 and I have a 3. So we know, we've worked with 4 and 3s a lot, that we know that 12 is what we need to get them to be too. Okay, so I'm going to take times 12. No, not times 12. I need it to be 12. So I need to multiply it by 3. Times 3 times 3. 3, I'm going to multiply it by 4. So now I'm working with 4 times 4 is 16 twelfths plus 9 twelfths. Okay, when I add these together, 16 and 9 gets me to 25 twelfths. Okay, now this one is going to be not just adding 1 to my whole number, right? If I add these together, I got 2. But I need to look at 25 twelfths. So I could take it apart. 12 twelfths plus 12 twelfths would get me to 24 plus 1 twelfth would get me to 1 plus 1 plus 1 twelfth, or 2 and a twelfth. So I need to add 2 to my already 2 to get, let me come up here, 4 and 1 twelfth gallons, which is this little answer right here. Otherwise, I could have always done the top divided by the bottom. 25 divided by 12 is 2, minus 24, I have 1 left over. Here's my numerator, here's my denominator, 2 and 1 twelfth. So now I have to add that to the 2 that I have right here, right? So I'd get 4 and 1 twelfth. All right, I know that was incredibly long, and I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that again. But I'll see you later. Good luck on your assignment. Ask me if you have any questions.